Welcome to The Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles individuals who are passionate about what they do for a living, about what organization they belong to, or simply passionate about the community they are a part of. Hello there, and welcome to our fourth season. My name is Dave Cunningham. This season, a few changes to mention. As you may have noticed, our theme has changed. The instrumental is called Stasis Oasis, composed and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. In addition, the program is now just a podcast. I'm hoping to have a new episode uploaded every 2 weeks to your favorite provider. Check our Facebook page for details. In this episode, the first in a series, Women Covering the News. Conversations with reporters in the area passionate about local news. This time around, we speak with a print journalist working with the Kingston Whig Standard, and her name is Steph Crosier. Steph, welcome to the program.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, when I read your LinkedIn page, it talked about you covering court, cops, sports, education, among other things, which I guess is a good definition of local news. And tell me about your passion for covering local news.
Oh, well, I mean, everyone has a right to know what is going on in the world around them. But local news in particular is what impacts a person the most. And I just think everyone has the right to know what is happening in their neighborhood and when, and how it impacts them. Because, we should obviously be watching national and international news, but what is happening in your backyard is the most important, I would argue.
Now, do you get any reaction from your readers about some of the stories that you do put in the paper?
Oh, 100%.
Tell me about some of those reactions, about local news coverage.
Yes. So, Kingston is very verbal, especially on social media, especially on Twitter. We're a very active Twitter community, which is good and bad, but mostly good. And then I do get phone calls and emails. Some of them very constructive responses, some of them not so much. And I always like to have a little sassy comeback. I don't like to not reply to anyone, especially if they take the time to email me, unless they're being extremely verbally abusive, which does happen every so often. But so I always like to reply to people as much as I can. Mostly constructive, and the meaningful ones I will save in a feel goods folder for those tough times that come up every so often.
So I would guess that any response, good or bad, is good in the from the perspective that you are engaging your readers. Yeah,
I mean, if a story has impacted someone to take the time to write me, then that means I've made an impact, or the story has made an impact. I like stories to speak for themselves. I think people get a little confused. They say, you said this, you said that. I'm like, well, I didn't say anything. I just made it so it makes a little more sense to everyone. My skill, I hope everyone agrees with this, is being able to take maybe something that's a little more complicated and presented it in a way that is accessible for people to understand and to relate to.
We'll come back to the whole business of writing stories in a bit, but I wanted to go back to the beginning where you sat down and decided that this was what you wanted to do as a career. And one of the things that I read is that you did start off by going to RMC, which doesn't seem like the direct route to being a print journalist.
No. But it was the most obvious route for me. I grew up, I'm a military brat. My dad is an air navigator with the Royal Canadian Air Force for 34 years. And my sister is a pilot. She flies a C-17, and my brother is a artillery officer. And all three of them went to RMC.
At what point did you decide to switch to pursuing a career in journalism?
So I was at RMC, and at RMC, I studied politics, but they want you to be a well-rounded officer, and so you have to take calculus, even though you're a politics major. And I and math don't get along very well at all.
I can identify with that.
Yeah, I managed to get through the first year university calculus, but second year I just could not muster that. So that's how I left, and that was I believe in speaking about mental health, and because we write about it all the time, and that was by far the darkest period in my life, because that was what I was going to do. I was going to be an intelligence officer, and I was there's a lot of research as well, similar to journalism and writing. So I was fully committed to doing that. And when I left, it was, gosh, awful time. And my mother, God love her, she acknowledged, she knows who I am, obviously, and how I need a mission, I need a job. And we're from the Trenton area, and she saw Loyalist College have this new journalism, online print and broadcast, and I've always loved writing. So she's like, I've signed you up for this. This is what you're doing. She issued me an order. So I finished RMC in mid-August is when I left, and started school a few weeks later. And so I just always loved writing. So that's how I got ordered into the profession.
So it became a natural fit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I come from a bit of a broadcast background right after I graduated from university and did radio for about 20 years. And I recognize the fact that if you are going to progress in that sort of career, you have to move around. And I see from your resume that you did your share of moving from one place to another place. Describe that process and what basically motivates you to go from one point to another point.
Oh, well, that's very normal for me. It was very natural, the idea of having to move. My whole family's military, so we moved a lot. Well, we moved about every 5 to 6 years growing up. So the idea of moving for a job is normal in my mind. So I did a summer in Hamilton and lived with my grandmother, who was in Oakville. And then I went to Winnipeg and lived with friends who are in the military. So they were posted to Winnipeg, and I lived with them. And that ended up, it was first internship, and it turned into a job. So I stayed there. And then Sault Ste. Marie was my first daily paper. So it was a natural kind of progression to move there. Which was interesting because Sault Ste. Marie is, if anyone looks on the map, it's a little remote. It's fun. I had a great time in Sault Ste. Marie because I love the outdoors, and they have a great trail system there that I use every weekend. And then when the job in Kingston showed up just a few months after I arrived in Sault Ste. Marie, it was kind of an opportunity that I could not say. I had to apply, basically. And I felt bad because I feel like I just got to Sault Ste. Marie and then I moved, but I was only there for 8 months. But most of my family is in Trenton, Belleville area. And then the Whig has such an amazing reputation and team. And I had to apply, and I'm very thankful that I got in. I think I got the job because I did my second interview from my late great aunt's funeral. She lived in Sudbury, and I was there because Sault Ste. Marie is not too far from Sudbury. So I went and just kind of stepped out during the wake. I really wanted this job. She would have loved that, so it's totally fine.
For our listeners who may not be aware of how it works in the print media, so when you are starting off at a newspaper, what kind of stories are you writing when you first get going?
Oh, when you like as an intern, whatever they tell you to do.
Right.
They encourage you to present your own story ideas, of course, but when you're an intern, you're going to a lot of little things like bake sales and church functions, which are something I learned in journalism school, is that there's no boring stories, just a boring writer, because that garage sale and that church function, that means a lot to someone. I think one of my strengths, and maybe one of my flaws as well, is that I love to give 110% to whatever I'm doing. And that has burned me out in the past, which is why I call it one of my flaws. But if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do 110%. So if it's a garage sale or a church function, it's going to be the coolest dang church function that anyone has ever been to. And I know that means a lot to whoever organized it. So when you're starting out, those are the types of things you're doing. And you're doing a lot of running around as well. I like a lot of legwork for photos and for interviews, and maybe gathering information for the more experienced writer to assemble the story.
When you had the offer to come and work at the Whig Standard, what was it that basically drew you to applying for the job? Was it the reputation of the paper, or was it this type of stories you would be writing? What sort of motivated you to go down that road?
To apply to Kingston, it was a myriad of things. So a key one is my family was nearby. I'm very tight with my family, so that was important. But for the paper, it was a reputation. Like, the Whig is known. And I wanted to be a part of that. And I told them right from the beginning that I wanted to do cops and crime, and I wanted to do breaking news. I'm an adrenaline junkie, and I love that stuff. So, and they had someone recently leave, and maybe not recently leave, but they wanted someone to fulfill that role of doing cops. And so it was kind of a perfect timing that I came along and wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm. Good. Let's talk about the process now that you're at the Whig and you are writing for the Whig. For those people who may not be aware, so you are basically picking your own stories or jumping in when somebody tells you to go and cover something in particular. What's the breakdown of what stories you would choose to write about and stories that are assigned to you at this point?
It's a good mix. Journalism is a team effort, so when things need to be covered and you're available, you do that story for the team. And but our editor Steve Service is wonderful in allowing us to explore whatever we want to write about. And so, I'm given a lot of freedom to pick and choose and develop story ideas. And he is, it's funny, working remotely, I don't get to run into his office and complain or to bounce ideas off or brainstorm a story. But that is basically how this team works, is being able to, you come up with your own story idea and then we're able to whittle it down to a focus. So it's a good mix.
Story that you've written recently that is particularly close to you, one that you really felt that you'd done a good job with the story that you wrote. What would that be? Is there one or two that jump into your mind?
There are some meaningful ones for sure. Last year I was nominated for Ontario Newspaper Awards for, I did a dispatcher's feature, and I sat in communication centers with the paramedics and police and fire, and I'm really proud of that because I literally did about 12 hours of shadowing just for that, and so I was happy with that. And we were nominated for our coverage of the shooting downtown at the corner of Queen and Bagot. Mm-hmm. And that I'm really proud of our work on that story. We worked as a team and we covered it ethically and with respect to the family. And I know for a fact that they appreciate that because that was an awful day that will not leave me for quite a while. So, yeah, I'm really proud of that coverage and the follow-up coverage of that as well.
One of the issues that I'm sort of curious about, because I know that there are circumstances that come up and you hear about something going on like right now, and you're trying to figure out what exactly is happening, and you want to get some information that is relatively objective, and all you are hearing is rumors or hearsay or whatever. And it's the issue of immediacy, and how does print media, and I guess I'll ask the question of someone else when we're talking about television or another medium. The question becomes is, how do you address immediacy when people really want to know something right now, and they have to wait until you publish the paper tomorrow or a couple of days from now?
Oh, we're fully online.
Right.
Our website is up to date with breaking news. We're able to push it out immediately. We don't report rumors because we have ethics and rules that we follow. Yeah. Not everyone follows those same rules, but we do. And so how do I find that information? In my time here in Kingston, like, I've built a network, and I know if something is happening immediately, it's you have to assess the situation and determine the most accurate person to contact, who has the most authority on the issue, and who would have the most reliable information. For example, if it were a crime, I obviously would go to who I know at the police, who I trust would have reliable information.
In your experience, given the rapid change of technology these days, do you find that most people have access to a computer to get the information online? Or how can you judge that, or do you judge that? So if I am looking for some information, so there is a train derailment on Bath Road, as did happen a while back. So if I want to get some information about it, okay, so I know I can go online to look at the Whig's page to get current information or the latest information. Do you find that most people will follow that route who have been reading the paper for years, or do they wait for the paper to come out before they go online?
Well, I mean, I think it's depends on the population. I know, like, many of our newspaper readers are older, and some of them do have computers, but I know, like, my grandmother doesn't have a computer and didn't have internet for the longest time, and yeah, they would wait for the next day, or listen to the radio. We have some great radio hosts here in town, but I think there's many people who are very active online and know to follow our Facebook page or our website or on Twitter. Like I said, Kingston is very active on Twitter and have a fair bit of followers on there as well.
Now, I read that you get involved in preparing videos as part of your job. At least that's what your LinkedIn page said. Is that something that is fairly common these days for print reporters, is to make use of videos?
We are evolving more and more into that. I'll admit, I wish I do it more. I don't do it as much as I should. And that is a flaw of mine that I'm working on. And we were working to create more and more videos because everyone in our newsroom, or the majority of the people in our newsroom, have the skill to do video. Many of us are what we call multimedia journalists. So we write our stories, we take our photos, and we can do video. It really comes down to time sometimes. And if you're really skilled at making a video, maybe an iMovie on an Apple or iOS platform, it can be fairly quick, but it's a learning curve for some, and it can take up time that we don't always have. But yeah, I want to do more videos. It just comes down to time. And with COVID and the pandemic and being at home, the last 6 months have been insane. So
How do you see newspapers evolving? You mentioned the incorporation of videos into your coverage because you're going to put a lot of this online. Where is this all going as far as newspapers are concerned in terms of technology?
Oh gosh, I wish someone would tell me that. No, we are. We are going slowly online first. As in, we're writing for online and the paper second. So as soon as the story is ready and edited, it will be published online. Like in the past, we may have waited till 5:45 to post it online, just so our competitors don't see the same story. That's just our competitive spirit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
But now it's online first. So we will get it up immediately so we can make money from ad revenue, hopefully. That's as far as I know.
Which is very important.
Yes, it's a balance for me, whereas I want to know, obviously, and it would be smart for me to know where my business is going, obviously. But then the other part of me is just head down and do my job and do it well for my own mind and for our readers who deserve it.
Question, and I don't know if you've had the opportunity to do any research on this, but I'm sort of curious. When it comes to the news consumer, is the consumer getting most of their news by reading it or watching it? Do you have a sense of that at all?
Oh, goodness. There is still an appetite for long form journalism and for long stories and features. We have those people on the page on the website. Like we can see how long people are on a page. And when we have stories, people are on the page for very long stories. People are on the page for a long time and they're reading it. With print, I would argue that we have no time constraint, like a 90-minute time constraint to tell a story. We have the space and the time to tell it with beautiful detail and intense detail and answer questions that maybe wouldn't make it into a short segment. That is just the benefit of print and online.
Question, is there a particular story that you would like to sit down and write about that you have yet to do?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. I'm so open to everything right now that I'm willing to do almost any story. If it's obviously worth, if it's a story, if it's newsworthy. We're always, I think it sounds a little harsh, but following the money is important. So when people are paying taxes, it's important to follow that money to make sure it's being spent responsibly and in the right hands. Yeah, I'm always up for that story. I don't know. I've been given so much good freedom at the Whig to tell stories of I like to tell stories that people are maybe afraid to write about. Yeah. So I have written about suicide. I've written about abortion. I've written about sexual assault, which are dark subjects, but I know that they're important to tell. People need to know that these things are happening. And those are the stories I get the most meaningful responses from. So I know we're doing something right in that regard.
We've just about reached the end of our conversation here, and I want to thank you very much for giving us time to tell us a little bit about your particular passion, and all the best to you going forward.
Thank you so much.
Theme music for the program is Stasis Oasis, a tune written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of our episodes, please send a note to the Kingstonian Podcast Facebook page. This is Dave Cunningham from Kingston, Ontario. Thank you for listening. Until next time.